But I know these guys, the wizards who have been, perfecting the way Clue looks, the character that I play, who's about 30 years younger than I am. When they first created that, they called upon my wife to come in and give the final tweaks. They figured that she knew me better than anybody, and what she was working with is a head, a clay head, that they scan into the computer, and then I get to drive that head. Isn't that bizarre? A younger version of myself. There's a book I made for the cast and crew, and I have a picture of that. This is kind of like, this gives you an idea here, over here. That might be a Clue day at work.
I was very curious when we were shooting how Clue would end up looking, because when I worked with Jeff, of course, he was wearing this face replacement motion capture rig, what I called the Teletubby hat. He had lots of little dots all over his face, and even with that, distraction, he was able to create such a compelling and terrifying character in Clue. So I was very curious to see how that turned out, and I think it's just extraordinary.
It was wonderful working with Garrett, as my son. He kind of reminds me of myself in looks and his demeanor, and we hung out quite a bit and developed quite a good relationship off camera, and I think that informs both of our performances. He's wonderful in Tron.
Once I moved to LA, I was given the script to Door on the Floor, and I read it, but they had just cast that role that very day, but I mean, seeing the film, I didn't want to be in that. I thought everybody did fantastic. I would have messed it up, but he's so good, man. He's such a brilliant person, and to be able to work with him, it's just so inspiring. He's a person that's inspired by all aspects of life, of literature and music and philosophy and spirituality, and I am as well. And to be able to go through this journey with him, I felt so fortunate and lucky.
Well, I mean, the original film kind of was a huge formative experience for me. I was 12. I was the perfect age, ready to be kind of transported to another world. And I remember walking out of the cinema and just, everything was different. When you watch those films that you walk out of the cinema and you still are kind of half in the world that you've just been in, and yet you're in your real world as well, and it blends. And that somehow kind of influenced me wanting to be a part of cinema, wanting to be able to be in films that could do that for people, And so when I knew that Disney were interested in me being in this film, I just, I jumped at the chance. I couldn't wait. It was such an honor and a privilege to be a part of that world. I still find, even now, sitting here and seeing the Tron poster and seeing the Tron, emblem on call sheets and things like that, it just makes me go crazy. And to work with Jeff, who's a real hero of mine, and just to be around him, and it was just an extraordinary experience.
I came in without seeing the first film. It's something.
I've never forgiven him.
It's just so hard to be here and say that every time. It's a really painful experience. But thanks for asking that question. But what I knew, I always knew that it was a great idea. The imaginative leap that you could get stuck inside of a computer and what would it be like in there, and that it turns out to be gladiatorial games. I just think it's the best idea ever, and it's so rich with imaginative possibilities, and that Disney were going to do this again. You knew that they were going to have to bring something really extraordinary to the table in terms of the story ideas and the technological possibilities, and they did and have exceeded all of that. Yeah, but you'll be reassured to know that I did finally watch the film, and it's really good. And when it comes out, you should watch it too.
Then, when we started really discussing the character, I was interested in her being unlike any female role in any of these big action adventure flicks. I wanted her to be for the girls. I wanted her to be a warrior, but also very intelligent and very vulnerable and compassionate. And so I had a lot of fun researching her. And it became more and more of a joy to create Cora as I found different cultural references, historical references to inspire me. One of the major ones was Joan of Arc. Once it kind of clicked in for me that Cora was Joan of Arc of the cyber universe, I felt so confident that whatever they threw at me, whatever script revisions came my way, I understood her perspective. You know, and the reason she's Joan of Arc is because Joan of Arc was this unlikely warrior, this kid who was leading the French army. She had a kind of supernatural strength, carrying this giant sword, huge chainmail armor, but also this kind of compassion, optimism, and light. And so that's what I wanted in Cora. It's an unusual combination to be a kid and also a warrior. And so I had so much fun with that, and I'm really pleased with the result.
When I met Joe Kosinski, the director, he talked about wanting a character who was kind of a real showman, you know, a real larger-than-life character. And he talked about Joel Grey as the MC in Cabaret, something along those lines. And then I thought about it in terms of a character who kind of reinvents himself constantly, who's like a chameleon, who sheds a skin and becomes someone else and plays with identity, and also is kind of like you know, as a computer program, he's like a search engine. He assimilates information, and then it comes out as sort of pop cultural references. And so I kind of got led to thinking about Bowie, someone who's always invented himself and created these characters like Ziggy and Aladdin Sane and the Thin White Duke and all that. So he seemed like a good reference point for it. So I kind of played with that idea a little bit.
I'm not the most technologically driven person, you know, so that was the first, you know, obstacle. Wearing these suits is very unique. To wear something that's so, to showcase something that's so first of its kind, you know, that was special. I mean, these suits were half an inch of foam rubber, and cables to the lights would run straight through the middle of the foam, and you know, and these lights, paper thin, were the first of their kind, and you know, the suit was created. We had to be cyber scanned, and the suit was completely formulated by every shape and curve of our bodies. So, you know, that's, you know, different as well. And sometimes every morning it could take 2 to 2.5 hours to get the suit on. But you knew that anybody would kill to put on this suit, man. So everything, you adapt to everything like that with time.
And once the suit was built, because that was so much about her, and I mean, such a key part of who she was this vision, you know, and once I was in that, it was very easy for me to figure out what this character was, you know. But it was Joe's vision from the beginning, and he had a very specific idea of what this character would look like and what she would represent, and yeah.
I can honestly say the film has surpassed all my expectations as far as how overwhelmingly cool it is. I mean, I knew it was gonna look cool, I knew it was gonna sound cool, but everything put together, just for me, it's like this revolution in filmmaking and film watching. It really feels like you're on a ride, and that was something that I think we hoped for. But when I saw it for the first time the other night in 3D, I realized, like, wow, this is major. This is more than a movie.
But you know, Jeff is a great friend. We don't see each other often enough, and it was like we only wrapped the first picture 3 weeks ago when we started on this. When I saw him up in Vancouver, you know, it was just boom. 28 years gone by, and who knew? 28 minutes, you know.
Well, yeah, making movies without cameras, that's entirely, you know, I had never done anything like that. So it was completely different, yeah.
I just felt so lucky to be a part of this film, and to be a part of Joe Kosinski's directorial debut, man. I mean, I just feel he's the next visionary genius of our time, and you know, from being in Tron Legacy, I'm the one screaming, you know, afterwards that I was just in a Joseph Kosinski film, man. And when I watched it for the first time yesterday morning, I walked out and I didn't know the words to describe it, really. And there was undoubtedly nothing to compare it to, and I thought that was the best part about it. You know, I felt very lucky to be a part of this.